Hello, it's Wednesday, the 26th day of March 2025. Good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 125, and on all social media platforms around the world on myjoyonline.com. We've just been bringing you the live coverage of proceedings in Parliament where the E-levy tax has been abolished, among the others that are also continuing to go through the procedure before the abolishment of it. I'll take you to the NPP headquarters where Richard Ahiagba is addressing the media.
The National Economic Dialogue. President Mahama campaigned to establish a 24-hour economy. And all of you are aware, we stood here many times to tell you that was a scam, but somehow it fell through the cracks and then we voted for them. Today, with the evidence from the 2025 budget, you will agree with me that it's indeed a scam in the making. The 2025 budget, as you will agree, made no provisions for the implementation of the 24-hour economy. The only comment we hear about it is that sometime along the line, the finance minister will bring a policy proposal to Parliament for consideration about the 24-hour economy. There is no allocation in the budget for it. The government's priorities in the 2025 budget clashed with the expectations of Ghanaians, which is evident in the funding allocations for the programs in the budget designed to impact lives. It is unusual for a government that has won election on the promise of jobs and economic growth to allocate significantly lesser resources to support development in the real sector of the economy. The government has earmarked a whopping $2.711 billion for compensation at the Jubilee House, exceeding the allocations made combined for the following programs, shall I say, flagship programs for the government. One, the Agriculture for Economic Transformation. A total of $1.5 billion was allocated for that program. The National Apprenticeship Program, a total of $300 million allocated. The National Coders Corps, this is supposed to take care of some 1 million Ghanaians. A total of 100 million was allocated. You've heard about the Jumera program. A total of 100 million is what they allocated. And a few women amongst us this afternoon. The Women's Development Bank, a measly 51.3 million is what they allocated. All this put together is less than what the president allocated for his office. For the compensation, I'm not talking about anything else. There are many things that they have allocated for the Office of Government Machinery. But this is just for compensation of a handful of people at the Jubilee House. 2.7 billion. More than what they have allocated combined for these flagship programs that they said they were going to do. So from here, you can see that the government's priority is not the good people of our country, who they canvassed, whose votes they have obtained, on the back of a promise that they are coming to create a certain Ghana with a certain program of resetting to a better place. But then now we see clearly that they are resetting us backwards, and we all have to try and fight to resist that. It is not done yet. I have seen some efforts across the society, women especially, who are intent on fighting back to see that these promises, especially the promise on the Women's Development Bank, is realized. But I can tell you that with this allocation, there's very little that you can hope for. So ladies and gentlemen, how can this be, as I indicated earlier, with this allocation and the promise they made to us, there's a clear mismatch in terms of the commitment to deliver on these promises. The budgeted amount for compensating a small group of people, as I indicated, who are working around the president, is higher than the allocation made to impact the lives of millions of young people and Ghanaians at large. Many have criticized this misplaced priority in the 2025 budget. The Chief Executive of Agri-Impact, Mr. Daniel Fahine Akwe, a significant stakeholder whose view from his criticism suggests to me that he was not consulted, his views were not sought, even though the government is going on a spree, creating the impression that they are a very consulting government. But a stakeholder such as this has not been consulted. And he has come out to criticize the allocation for the agricultural sector as insufficient. Others, including the AGI, have also criticized this budget. What that means, ladies and gentlemen, is that the budget is at variance with the expectation of the people of Ghana. The Women's Bank, as I said, also suffer another faith where the entire allocation for it is less than what has been allocated to the Lone Ranger Office, the Office of Government Communication, that sees a whopping 78 million Ghana cedis compared to the 51 million allocated for the creation of the Women's Bank to affect the lives of millions of women in our country. One potentially positive aspect of the 2025 budget, I must say, is the elimination or the removal of the 10% betting tax and the E-levy. By the way, something that we had scheduled to repeal if we had won the election. So if we take that out, the balance of the 2025 budget has very little to offer in terms of the expectations of our people. I tell you that dissatisfaction with the 2025 budget is widespread. And so it's not a thing that you will say that it's a new patriotic party that is opposed to it or is not happy with it, but it is widespread. And as I've indicated, in the days ahead, we'll be engaging in conversations to do with the budget, and we are sure that Ghanaians will get to understand that indeed we have made the wrong choice in selecting the NDC and not the NPP. But for now, let me turn my attention briefly to the fight against corruption, Galamsey. The fight against Galamsey has significantly deteriorated. Just before the election, you heard calls in civil society, championed also by the National Democratic Congress. The president now, I've been seeing on platforms saying that Ghanaians voted for us, and so therefore we must resolve the problem of Galamsey. Some have called around that time for a state of emergency to be declared. And the NDC participated in that conversation and created the impression that we were not willing to do much about the fight to curb Galamsey. But today, you will agree, as I tell you, that this government lacked the commitment to fight Galamsey. And what exacerbation we're seeing in Galamsey around the country is as a result of the lack of commitment of the John Dramani Mahama administration. Today, our forests are populated with recruited militants from Ivory Coast and other regions to protect Galamseyers who, according to media reports, are NDC members. Currently, mining has devastated 44 out of the 288 forest reserves in our country. At this rate, we risk losing all our forest cover to Galamsey. A situation, when you ponder, should cause a shiver in your spine, because you have seen recently operatives and party members of the NDC actively preventing task force or security forces detailed to fight corruption and protect our forest cover. The NDC, ladies and gentlemen, is complicit in the astronomical growth in illegal mining in our country, because they campaigned actively in Galamsey areas with coded promise, which translates to mean that we will allow the boys to Galamsey simply by looking aside and pretending to be doing something about fighting Galamsey. So in other words, the NDC is talking more about Galamsey, is talking more about the fight to curb Galamsey than actually doing anything to fight it. With the NDC government in power now, these members and supporters whose votes they canvassed, and as events have turned out that they have obtained, have come back to take their pound of flesh. That's why you see the devastation around. That's why you have seen a renewed vigor amongst the Galamseyers out there with militants to protect them. And the government cannot do anything about it besides talk. You heard recently they commissioned some blue water guards, which blue water guards are not primary fighters. They are complementary to the fight, but then they are presenting them as their key proposition to fight Galamsey. And the individuals you see do not exude that confidence or have the stature or the readiness to be able to combat or engage any Galamseyer or Galamseyers who are wielding guns and machetes with the people we saw in the video who they have trained to be the blue water guards. And as I indicated recently, this blue water guard situation is not new. We have the river wardens trained and deployed somewhere in 2022, 2023. And so it's not a new thing they are doing. It is not the panacea to resolving the Galamsey situation. It's complementary, and the NDC is merely just talking about it. The real work they must do today is to be able to get security people to go out there and tell their party people to stand down. And all the people they have promised that they will allow to Galamsey to stand down so that our rivers and our forest can be saved from the ravages of their acts. As we speak, ladies and gentlemen, the Ofin Shelter Belt Forest Reserve is infested with Galamseyers who recently attacked and injured Forestry Commission Rapid Response Team members. In the Bream North District, several forests have been overtaken, namely the Chenchemso and the Jari Forest in Equiansi. This was just days ago, about 2 days ago. We've had these activities recorded. Additionally, the Tano Enua Forest in Awin, the Asenyano Forest River, and the Jimra Forest Reserve in Kawiya District have also been taken over by Galamseyers. Ladies and gentlemen, the lists of our forests that are being raped by these NDC Galamseyers who have been emboldened by the president's overtures in the campaign is just astonishing. And this is an unprecedented situation. The government must use every necessary resource to regain control of the situation. One of the key, ladies and gentlemen, one of the key actions in this direction is the revocation of LI 2462. The president promised he would do this in the campaign. we want to remind him that he must do that. In making this comment, let me quickly commend the media coalition against Galamsey led by Dr. Ken Ashigbe, our brother Erastus Asaridonko, and other civil society organizations that are engaged in ensuring that Galamsey, the fight against Galamsey is brought under control since this government took over and it has taken a turn for the worse. President John Dramani Mahama, using the Galamsey fight in the 2024 campaign, stated he will repeal LI 2462 to end mining in our forest reserves. However, as president, he has gone back on his promise to revoke the legislative instrument and instead has offered to amend parts of the law which takes away the president's power to approve applications for mining in forest reserves. So this is a tokenist approach which does not end mining in our forest reserve, and given the rate at which the NDC operatives are taking over our forest, under John Dramani Mahama, we are likely to lose the vast majority, if not all, of our forest cover. Ladies and gentlemen, amending the instrument will not suffice, considering, as I just said, the rate at which the forest covers or forest reserves are being attacked with armed protection from outside this country. A complete repeal of the law is necessary and is what we must demand to ensure a total ban on mining in our forests. We recall the state of the Galamsey fight under President John Dramani Mahama before he exited office in 2017. It was a total give up. His Minister for Lands and Natural Resources gave up on the fight. This time is very early on. It seems to me as if he just is continuing from where he left off. It appears today in our country that the fight against Galamsey has been given up on. The president is not focused on fighting Galamsey. What we experienced in 2016, or before the president left office, is coming back, as we all can tell. Members of the NDC are visibly emboldened to engage in the legal mandate because they realize that the president and their party will be lenient on Galamsey because of the promises they made to Galamseyers in the campaign. So we faced a choice, especially in protecting our environment, that the president is not interested in fighting corruption, but rather is engaged in persecuting his political opponents. Our environment is being sacrificed, and our democratic rights are under attack. This is what we voted for. But this is one thing that we must all come together and fight. People say elections have consequences. And the consequence of our choice on December 7th is facing us. Already, I get a lot of calls from young people who have been retrenched from employments they have attained legally and legitimately. Just yesterday, an announcement was made as though it was a pride point to say that some 100 people have been let go from the Ghana Post. This is what we voted for. But I know that this is not what Ghanaians were expecting when they made this choice.
We want them.
As it stands, we must fight, at least one, to ensure that our rights, at barest minimum, our democratic rights, are not completely taken away from us. The rate at which the Attorney General is going, we fear that might happen unless we speak up. So for me and for us, this is not a partisan call. This is a call to protect this Fourth Republic, that all actions of the government must comport with the law must be in accord with the law. And also, the fight to protect and save our environment must be spirited, and the government must commit itself to ensuring that we preserve our environment. As citizens, we cannot sit and feel helpless. We must engage. We cannot be indifferent. Therefore, we urge all Ghanaians to join us in this fight to protect our environment, our water bodies, and our democratic rights for ourselves and for our posterity. Thank you very much for coming. So, Milanum Yadamunina, she said,
Thank you for staying with us. You have just been briefed by the NPP, represented by Richard Ahiagba, giving us an update on what they say is their position on the 2025 budget presented by Dr. Kasiala Toforsen in Parliament. And many of the things that they have been addressing will be how much has been allocated, especially for the Women's Bank, as opposed to the amount of money that's been allocated to pay presidential staffers, if we don't have a better word to describe it, but persons who work in and around the president. Now, joining me via Zoom is Mustafa Gbandi, Deputy General Secretary, and also, luckily, presidential staffer. Thank you for joining us. What's your initial reaction to this presser?
I'm not a presidential staffer.
You're not?
I'm speaking to you as a Deputy General Secretary in charge of operations.
You have no dealings whatsoever in the presidency?
I have dealings. That is not my title. You give me your own title.
What do you do at the presidency then?
I'm a Deputy Director of Operations.
You're a Deputy Director of Operations at?
The presidency.
At the presidency?
Yes, please.
What would that amount to?
I think that I've corrected you on my title because you don't give titles and I just did. So can we progress on the conversation, which is the substance?
Okay, so you're speaking to us as a Deputy General Secretary to the party.
Yes, please.
And then also your operation, what did you say you work as at the presidency?
Madam, my name is Mustafa Gbandi. I'm a Deputy General Secretary in charge of operation. And you have called me to respond to an NPP press conference, which I obliged and I joined. And then you made a mistake. I just corrected you.
And I want the correction. I just want the correction done quite well. That's all. So on record.
I did indicated to you that I'm a Deputy Director of Operations at the President. Your producers should have given you that information.
What's your initial reaction to the presser?
It's as much as I do nothing about anything. I mean, did you find any substance? It's noise. Because the NPP believes that because they have failed between 2016 and 2024 as a government, the NDC should necessarily fail. But what they don't realize is that at the end of the day, we have people to take care of. We have a country to build. And that the mere fact that you've failed as a government doesn't mean the NDC should also fail. Number one, they talked about illegal mining. Yes, it's a call that Ghanaians are calling on government. It happened under President Akufo-Addo. It's happening under President Mahama to chain out a strong government policy to deal with this Galamsey situation. My response to him is that very soon, the NPP will cry foul, and we will respond to their call with evidence to show that in the forest reserve, the people who have gained appetite to mine in the forest reserve, either through the president's approval, which President Akufo-Addo gave, or through illegal means are all NPP people. And that no NDC person is in that forest. But this issue of Galamsey is not an exceptional thing to only NPP.
Do I still have you
NDC
on?
elements in there who are in it there. Yes, we have lawyers who are in it there, and a lot of people who are into Galamsey. The government is barely 3 months, and of course, Ghanaians would expect President Mahama to bring. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Ghanaians would expect government to come out with a strong policy direction. Do you think that you can compare a failure of a government in 8 years to fight Galamsey to a government that is barely 3 months and of course 70% set up? And so I would plead that Ghanaians and yourselves would exercise some patience and allow government to clamp down on these negative operations happening around our forest reserves and our water bodies. In the last few days, you have seen the president's swift response by, first of all, setting up a new military council, appointing military chiefs, and of course, the new IGP also setting up the police environment. I can assure you that the backstop ends with enforcement.
Let's talk about
if you have
particularly
police officers who are all come again.
Let's talk about particularly the concern about the LI that allows the president to allow some mining in the forest reserves, particularly LI 2462. They are mentioning that just amending it sort of would not be the right way to go. They're calling for a complete repeal. What's your take on that?
Well, the people who have brought 100% mining in the forest are now saying that they are calling for a complete repeal. Does it mean President Akufo-Addo should never be forgiven for introducing mining in our forest reserve in the first place? Does that mean the president was reckless? Does that mean President Akufo-Addo and his government had an enormous appetite to look for money in the
The call for it to be repealed, particularly, I'm not sure if your network is, if you're still with me, but hopefully you can hear me. The concern really will not be what it amounts to. The concern really
in the forest reserve. And then you go and organize a press conference to say that you are calling for a total repeal. Were they not the same people who supervise 100% mining in the forest reserve?
If you can hear me, we'll move to that. But do you agree to the repeal of it completely, or you're concerned about what it really means?
I entirely also agree with the fact that mining in the forest should be controlled. And of course, mining in the water bodies should be an abominable practice. I am looking forward for the IGP to transfer all these Galamsey infected police officers who help perpetrate these things in the areas of the mining district. When that is done, you will see a strong government measure very soon confronting these menaces that will give Ghanaians the peace of mind they need. And I can assure you that very, very soon, the NPP will organize another press conference crying because the very individuals who are involved in this are NPP people. And when we clamp down on them, you will see NPP crying.
Let's move to the amount allocated. He also mentioned that the amount allocated specifically for the Women's Bank, he mentioned 51 million, just opposing it to an amount that he quoted as how much is being used to pay for persons that work in and around the president. He quoted an amount of 78 million as well. What's your reaction to this?
Well, I don't need to react to it because my brother Felix, who is government communication as far as budget and all these issues are concerned, will deal with that at the appropriate time. But I don't take NPP press conferences very seriously.
Why not?
Because only 3 months ago,
they are the largest opposition party in Ghana. Why not?
No, a very useless one. Only 3 months ago, these are the very individuals who starved this nation. Only 3 months ago, these are the very individuals who slept on the job. Just 3 months ago, these were the very people who stole so much from this country. Look, Ghanaians are at peace knowing that the likes of President Akufo-Addo and the NPP and their ilks are not in power. It's a huge relief for the people of this country. And so when they fail to even go to their grassroots to apologize to them, and they are in Accra shielding criminals and want to get all of us busy talking about issues that don't bring bread and butter to the table, I will not be contributing to that. How important is this press conference to the ordinary Ghanaian who don't have a job? How important is this press conference to a national service personnel who was not paid for 9 months, only for directors of national service scheme to be stealing that money? How important is this press conference for the people they promised to build hospitals and yet collected the money and chopped? You know, can we waste our time talking every day instead of building a nation by people who have destroyed it? Look at the various revelations coming out.
Mr. Randy, if you describe this as a waste of time, what will really be the role of a minority or opposition?
We are looking forward in the coming days for people who will do with equity. Currently, they don't come with clean hands. And if you don't have clean hands, you can't call for equity. They are not fit. Let the Ghanaians speak to their own problems. The MPP is a wholesale cause of our problems today. Everything we face in this country today is caused by the MPP. And so the same people cannot be an opposition voice for the sake of it. They must come with clean hands. Do they have clean hands? These people who came and shared Ghanaian properties among themselves, these people who came only to observe you and I, our poor parents who have served this country, pensioners, to be treated as if they are slaves, these people who collapsed banks, these people who issued licenses for people to mine in the forest reserves without adherence to mining laws, do they have a voice to talk?
Right.
Look, whatever voice is happening in Parliament, those who are making those are business people. When they finish, they go to ask for contracts.
Well,
you can't take them serious.
Thank
they are
you,
not
Mr.
representing
Wandy.
Ghanaians.
Thank you. Thank you for reacting to this eventually, though you said you would react to it, but thank you so much. Now, moving on, this afternoon, Parliament has officially repealed the E-levy, bringing an end to the controversial tax since its introduction. But what does this mean for the economy and electronic transactions in the country? We'll explore that shortly. But first, here are key moments from parliamentary proceedings during the repeal. Well, we'll definitely bring you that from Parliament a little later in a subsequent bulletin or even still on Pulse. But I have in studio lead Joy News data analyst Isaac Kofi Ejay to walk us through the significance of the scrapping of this e-levy, where it started and where we are so far. Kofi, always a pleasure to have you in the studio.
To be here one more time.
Are you excited about the repeal, though?
Well, I don't think that there's any economic agenda like taxes, but so, I mean, you can actually gauge the sort of excitement that is actually in the public space at the moment. The fact that not just the NDC that featured it in its manifesto, but also the NPP, they all knew that the ordinary Ghanaian wasn't happy with that tax handle. We all saw it to be a very regressive tax. Why do you have to tax people's transactions? And you lifted a bar and said that, I mean, if it's exceed 100 cedis, it should attract e-levy. But we all know the cost of living in the country and how people's incomes have been dissipated. And so this was a tax handle that many actually saw it to be very regressive. And today, if it is gone, I think that if I'm in the shoes of the ordinary Ghanaian, I think that will be a happy moment for everybody. They say it's a digital freedom day.
Is it? Are we going to be asking for a holiday?
Well, already we have 2 holidays coming up. So.
But tell me, economically, what has been your projections?
Well, I think that though the e-levy was a very controversial, levy, it was one of the most promising tax handles that the country ever, introduced, because this was a levy that when it was coming into stream, 2022, we're expecting close to 7 billion Ghana cedis from that tax handle. And because of the e-levy, we had to scrap some of the taxes like the road toll and all of that to make way for the E-levy. We all remember how the finance minister then, Ofori-Atta was very categorical that if we are able to sail through this, this is going to happen is that it is going to save us. We are not going to go to the IMF. But what we've seen is that more than 2 years after we had implemented this tax handle, not only did we go to the IMF, but also the tax handle hasn't really performed the way we projected. In its first year, for instance, the projection was that at the end of 2022, we should get some 7 billion Ghana cedis out of that. But we all know that there were some delays, and instead of the bill or the law actually taking effect in January 2022, it took effect rather in May of 2022. And so that delayed the bill, and instead of 7 billion, we got less than, I think 600, million Ghana cedis. And that was a big, gap between target and actual. And what we've also been analyzing, looking at the data so far from the Finance Ministry, is that in terms of even projections, E-levy projections have gone below or has actually reduced from close to 7 billion cedis in 2022. Now, the 2025 projection was some 2.4 billion Ghana cedis. So that tells you that it's been taking a nosedive in terms of the projection. So this is a tax handle that, although was very promising, didn't really live to expectation because the people were very clear that they didn't like it. It was regressive. Don't introduce it. But government saw it to be a way of closing certain fiscal gaps. They did all right, but it looks like it didn't really work the way they projected.
I mean, despite it not meeting the expectations or the target, the target that we as a country or the government at the time was hoping to, did it not at least mitigate anything at all?
In fact, it did. It did. If you look at one reason why we got the IMF program so quickly relative to countries or our IMF cousins like Zambia and co., it was because we already had some of these tax or these policy, revenue mobilization policies already in force before we entered into the fund program in 2023. So it was very easy for the country to go to the IMF and present some of these things to the fund and say, look, we know this is the challenge we are having, but in the domestic space, we've taken steps to introduce a tax handle that could bring in some 7 billion Ghana cedis and all of that. And the IMF definitely will look at this and say, well, this is a country that is serious and wants to do business. And so even though it didn't really live up to expectation, it was one of the tax handles that helped the country to get the IMF program in a very, record time relative to what Zambia and co were struggling with and all of that. So it had its own bad aspect. But in terms of the positive, I would say that the E-levy played an integral role in Ghana getting that 3 billion bailout package from the IMF. Without that, it would have been very difficult. I do not know which tax handle could have brought in 7 billion Ghana cedis at that point in time. Although now we've seen new ones and all of that, the gold board and all what have you. But one tax handle that the government felt it was, very good, it was viable around that time was the E-levy, and it helped us to get the IMF bailout package.
I'm quite certain that you'd be back in the studio
Absolutely.
pretty soon, especially because there are many more bills that have been introduced in Parliament. It's happening underway, and as and when some are repealed, we'll bring you that. It'll be a good time to bring in some sector players into the conversation. And joining me via phone is the Director of Business and Economic Bureau of Guta, Charles Kwesi Appiah. And also joining me will be Charles Kwesi Addo, President of Momo Vendors Association of Ghana and the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, Samson Asakia Wingobet. And also via Zoom is Professor of Finance at the Andrews University in the U.S. But let's just start with the president of the Momo Vendors Association. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I am quite certain that this will be some great news coming to you, but share with us your reactions and how you feel about this repeal.
Thank you, Emifa. Good afternoon. Very good afternoon to your service viewers and listeners. In fact, I must say I'm the National Public Relations Officer, not the President. So
okay.
On the slightest note. It's a good day to all the mobile money agents across the country. far back as 10th of May 2022, we visited the Jubilee House with regards to the implementation of the electronic levy. We explained matters up to the then president, indicating a lot of challenges if this levy comes to force, but they never listened. But interestingly, at the second quarter of last year, 2024, we also equally had the privilege to meet the current president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. And then he promised us that he would do the needful should he be given the mandate. And here we are. Agents are so happy. Interestingly, it's not only the agent body, we double as customers as well, because most of us use our normal phones to also transact business. MFA, we outlined a lot of issues that we had with regards to the electronic levy. One was with the market women. It is so difficult for our mothers to understand the deduction. Most of them even thought that it is the agent who is taking the law into his own hands, thereby deducting their very amount. So almost 37%, a research was conducted, almost 37% of our customers resorted to alternatives. The alternative way of sending money, taking money to the lorry station, and a whole lot of things happened to that. Our businesses folded up. Most of our agents who had 2 or 3 branches end up closing some of the branches. So the impact was so huge. So it's a good news that the president, Parliament has repealed, and then we're waiting for the president to attend to it. So it's a good news to all Ghanaians, equally the agent body.
I'll stay with you quickly before I go to Guta, but I know that this was a tax that we were supposed to adhere to. Did this mean that it didn't in any way contribute to the growth of the business in any way at all?
No. MFA, you know, as agents, there are numerous of taxes that we pay. Before even our commissions are paid on the second week of every month, we are made to pay 10% withholding tax before even our commissions are paid. Agents are to pay BOP, business operating permits, with the various NDC. Agents are paying rent, the land rent. So there are a lot of taxes that agents are paying. We are not saying that we are not people who are here to pay tax. We know taxes are good for the development of the country. But trust me, when this tax was introduced, there were a lot of issues with regards to education. The then Minister of Communication failed to educate the general public. So the onus lies with the agent body to, one, make sure they educate the customers and prospective ones so that they will understand the whole concept. We agent bodies were not even trained on how to explain matters up. I remember we had a meeting with Ghana Revenue Authority with regards to the deduction of the E-levy. It will interest you to know that the facilitator herself could not even explain why some agents were debited with regards to the E-levy on the 1.5%. So there were a lot of issues that we raised, but I don't know. They said they consulted major stakeholders before the law came to force.
Right.
But trust me, they failed. And therefore, the effect is what Ghanaians are feeling. With that said, through 2022 to 2023, it will surprise you that we don't know how the statistics came from Bank of Ghana that mobile money outweighs that of checks in bank. We were surprised. Most transactions were reduced, but the volume in terms of amount exceeded that of checks. But they got the report. We have nothing to say. And right after 2022, 2023, down to 2024, mobile money transactions is always on the surge. We are saying that the levy was not helpful. It brought about alternatives. But the core mandate of the mobile money was to make sure we bring the bank on board. That is our parents, our mothers.
Okay.
And if that is going to be a challenge and those who are operating it draws the attention of authorities, they have to pay heed to it. And
it sure must be a good day for you today. I want to go to Mr. Asaki Awingobet. I don't know your reaction personally, and even for the importers and exporters, and how this particular tax impacted your business. But let's hear from you.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear from me?
Clearly.
Good. So what I can say is that it's a good day, a good news for Mother Ghana. Many Ghanaians, ordinary citizens, and including the business community, are very excited. You can imagine if you had to pay a duty of 100,000 Ghana cedis and or 300,000 Ghana cedis per container as frozen chicken, and you have to pay it via Momo. 1% of that, you can imagine the figure that one will have. That could have used to transport your cargo from here to Kumasi or even from here to Tamale. And so I can tell you that it is a quiet relief for the business community, and it is also going to be a relief for consumers as well, because these taxes, or at the end of the day, will reduce the cost of doing businesses. Vis-a-vis, if we should get this steady stability, if we should get a fixed rate at the port, these are some of the things that the business community are looking for, to see to it that it is actually helping the business community. So I can tell you that, my dear sister, that it is a freedom, and this is the freedom Ghanaians voted for the National Democratic Congress to come and then rescue the Ghanaians. Many people who used to give remittances to their mothers, siblings, sisters back in the villages could clearly say that today I will no longer send my money through someone who's going home from Accra here to my hometown in Boku, or I will not say I will go and give the money to a transport driver to take it to Boku, but I will then put it in the Momo, and that my mother, that my sibling there can easily pick it. And so same thing as is giving a relief to Ghanaian ordinary citizens, it gives a relief to the business community as well.
This is good to know. I'll move to Professor Kwesi Pepra. You're an economist, and I'm quite curious that among the excitements for the business community, the many users or those who transacted and then the E-levy impacted them in any way. Overall, for the economy, what does this mean?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. So to the economy, we may see that the E-levy is going to cause a reduction in tax revenue. However, if we listen to the finance minister very carefully, he had already come out with another way to make up for this loss. I think another law was just passed in Parliament by uncapping the 6% tax ratio on the refund account to 4%, we leave 2%. So that is making up for the shortfall. Indeed, the E-levy itself should have been part of the communication and service tax, because that is where it should have been, and that tax is already doing very well. The aim for the communication and service tax is to support youth employment. And the same way, if you look at the intent of the E-levy, that was what the government said they were going to use it to support the youth employment agenda.
Prof, what was really the challenge with the E-levy? Was it the passing of it, the implementing of it, or the education that came with it, that did not come with it?
At the time that we brought in the E-levy, if you ask me, the whole financial sector industry had not reached to the point that we should tax. This was when a lot of citizens were having, let me call it, bank account with having a Momo account. You know, there have been a talk that there are a lot of Ghanaians without bank accounts. So people see their Momo account as their bank account. And now there are a lot of fintech transactions which are happening on the Momo account. So in economics, when you bring a new product, before you start to earn revenue, you must let it grow. Let it become very firm where people enjoy using it. And then they also understand that it brings them into the financial sector. Then you may introduce the tax. Again, the rate that was proposed was also a problem, 1.5%. And we remember the fight that happened in Parliament before it came to 1%.
Yes.
If you remember, at the time, the opposition, now the government in power, was even proposing a 0.5%. If it had been a 0.5%, I'm sure Ghanaians were ready, but it now turned into a political conversation, which has led to the removal. And so this is how it is. But I'm sure in the near future, we may see that the communication and service tax, the rate may go up.
So you think the business community and even users shouldn't be very excited, because it just might be waiting for us some way, somehow along the line?
Somehow, yeah. somehow, maybe in the near future, you may see the communication service tax was 9%. It was introduced by President Kufuor, and then in 2016 it was 9%, and then in 2017 the NPP government reduced it to 6%, and 2020 they took it to 9% again. In 2021 they brought it to 5%. So if you really look at it, there is that history and trajectory that it may find itself coming back in another form, but not this year. Maybe in 2 years from now, we may see the communication and service tax moving up by 0.5% or 1%.
Until then, for this your projection of 2 or 3 years, until then, actors and players in the economy at least would be relieved for now.
Yes, and until that time, the fintech industry would have grown and matured. You know, now there are a lot of transactions going on in the Momo, not only in the Momo digital economy, which is really catching up. The central bank has piloted the digital currency, and most of them will also be linked to these Momo accounts. And as the economy increases and improves in volume, citizens will understand the need to use these transactions. And that is when it becomes advisable to say, can we just pay something to support the government platform and also to support the economy? And for me, not in the form of e-levy, but seeing the communication and service tax being increased, maybe 0.5% or 1%.
Will this in any way or at large boost up the electronic transaction system or economy particularly? The electronic, all the transactions that we do electronically, will that at least boost it?
I mean, now that the tax has been removed, we may have to wait and see what will happen in the next 2 quarters to be able to come out with quantitative results to say removing the 1% has caused the usage of Momo transactions to increase.
Okay.
We know there were some who were of the view that they are not interested in using Momo transactions. You know, and that law, there were a lot of complications. Transferring from your Momo to your own account, you don't pay, but transferring from Momo to another account, you pay. So all these were some of the factors, and I mean, in effect, is removing this 1% will bring us some savings, whereby instead of the Bank of Ghana printing more cash, you may see a lot of transactions happening between our Momo account and then the banks. And in that case, the central bank will not be printing more money in terms of paper, let me put it, paper currency in the economy, but we may see electronic transaction increasing in volumes. And when they increase in volumes, that is where we may have to make that economic advice that probably the economy is mature for us to put about 0.5% tax on
Prof,
it.
Thank you so much for bringing us that education. If I still have Mr. Charles Kwesi Ado Guta, please share with me whether or not you're excited for Guta especially. You have talked about the taxes even before elections and after elections. But for this particular one, the many other ones that they're pushing in Parliament to be repealed, what really is your reaction? Do I still have, well...
Yes. Sorry.
Oh,
good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, my pleasure. My name is Charles Kwesi Apiakubi. That's for a correction.
Okay. That's a
right.
Kubi. Thank you so much.
That's right. My pleasure. Of course, it's come to us as a good news. In fact, we're anticipating it. Proud to even the budget reading, because that was one of the assurances that they gave to the public, that when they come to power, they will make sure such taxes that are crippling the economy and consumer spending, you'll take it off. Of course, it also reduces our burdens and increase the disposable income of the ordinary Ghanaian. You could imagine someone who have worked so hard in Accra and made 200 Ghana cedis as savings and want to send some to her parents in the village. And they have to be bedeviled with 1% charge for sending such money to save the family. And when it gets to the family and they want to withdraw, there's another charge. So the burden, the discouragement. I know there's economic ramification. Even though government were thinking they are making so much revenue, but in fact, they're also losing, because you realize that the usage of a digital platform also reduced from the day they passed the E-levy as compared to the previous days without E-levy. You see, when there's a float of funds, there's something we call the funds transfer pricing.
Right.
That's you, the banks, you, the central banks also enjoy some kind of free funds for on lending to other people. But the moment these floating funds start reducing because you introduce unattractive E-levy, you're also losing in terms of some cashing in free funds in terms of interest incomes. So to us businesses, it's a good news. I was citing a scenario somewhere. You are there, your supplier calls you that we are going to increase prices of items, and it is 5 p.m. You can't go to the bank. What you have to do, you have to pull some funds from your account to your Momo. If you're pulling 100,000 for that transaction, they charges you 1,000 Ghana cedis. So on 100,000, they charge you 1,000 Ghana cedis. That's an extra cost to you as business. Then you have to push it to the supplier. Pushing from your Momo to the supplier, there's another 1%, which also about 1,000 Ghana cedis. So for your supplier also to withdraw such money to credit the account, they also charge them another 1%. So on 100,000, government is raking over 3,000. That becomes part of business costs. And business that we have only been complaining that cost of doing business is so high, and therefore it's affecting price of items, and it's also pushing inflation. These are some of the things that we're accounting for it.
Mr. Piakubi, I would have thought that for a business owner, you really will roll over the cost of it to the consumer. Is that not what the business community was doing, or even that had a challenge? You
see, practically, you assume that we have to push such extra costs to the consumer. But the question is, affordability. When you push such costs to the consumer, do they have the purchasing power to absorb the extra cost? And the answer is no. So that's, of course, have some stagnation in terms of economic flow. I have passed on the cost. There's no one buying. How do I make some revenue? How do I then pay my obligations to the state? So the dotted effects of such scenarios where we have to push extra cost to consumer, but they don't have the corresponding purchasing power, it's a negative effect to us businesses and to the economy as a whole.
How soon should consumers expect to feel the impact of this E-levy that's been repealed on your business? Because then if you're a happy business owner, I would be a happy consumer as well, or a happy customer or client as well. How soon should we be expecting the impact?
I have always made this argument. It is never in the interest of any serious business person to overprice items. When we have the opportunity to reduce costs of doing businesses, our first beneficiaries are consumers. Because when they are able to purchase items, that's where we're able to have high rollover and turnover of our businesses. And when it comes to a typical environment like the FMCGs, where profit is between 5 to 10%, we thrive on volumes. So when you're able to reduce your prices through some of these savings, you are short of increasing your sales volumes. And as your sales volumes are increasing, your profit line are also increasing. So as early as possible, consumers will attest to this. The moment we receive the final assent from the president and it's implemented, they will enjoy that savings that we're going to give to them.
Thank you so much for these assurances. I'm sure that many viewers watching will be excited. So following the repeal of the E-levy, we've been engaging Mr. Charles Kusi Apiakubi from Guta, Samson Asaki Awingobert, and also Mr. Charles Kwesi Ado. He speaks for the Momo Vendors Association, and also Professor Kwesi Pepra is an economist. We'll go for a quick break. You're watching The Pulse. We'll be back with more. Please stay. Welcome back to The Pulse. Now, residents and commuters at the industrial area at North Kaneshie in the regional capital are asking for tighter measures for mounting of billboards, as many of the billboards mounted on the stretch were all brought down by the rains yesterday, some covering parts of the roads. They've been speaking to Hannah Odami, who toured the area this morning. Here's her report.
Street lights destroyed, billboards down, all due to the heavy winds which accompanied the rains last night. Those who use the stretch are concerned.
We have a problem with this thing that we see here. It's giving us a problem because I work around here. From the latest room to all this side, everything is collapsed. And we've complained so many times, and they are not doing anything. When we talk about it, and they said we should go to the EMA at Kaneshie, we went there several times. Me, myself, personally, my boss, we went there. They said we don't have any control over it, that we should go and see the authority. So who is the authority that can stop all this? Because when we close from work, if something like this, what will happen is it will create a big disaster for us. So please, the government should come and do something about it.
There are a whole lot of factories here, meaning there are a whole lot of factory handmen who are working around here. The time in which this thing happened was around the time where workers were going home. If not that they decided to stay in their various factories and wait for the rain to stop before they go home, there would have been a different disaster all over. It is too much. It is an industrial area, a very busy place. So the government should check, or those who are involved, those who are responsible for it, they should check. It's too much here. It's too much here. Imagine, look at how closer is it to our electric post too. Imagine if I don't gone forward or back and came to this side, then it would have caused another thing.
This security man, who saw how most of the boards fell, has the strong advice for owners of the billboards.
It's better material, or maybe if they do this thing, they have to do something that will be hanging or chalk the big board. Otherwise, this one, like, we thank God that there is no any vehicle passing around. Like casualty, we will hear something that we supposed to not be.
Other passerbys are equally concerned and urge authorities in charge to strictly enforce regulations on mounting the billboards.
For the billboard industry, let us have a way of erecting them and making them permanent. For example, some countries, if they even want to make a spoon, they consider how long would it last. So in simple, let us consider sustainable way as a country of building our projects, but not just building it for immediate use and effect. The best way is to face the law. That is either by pulling it down, by sanctioning, by fining them to pay, so that people will take these sustainable measures serious.
For Joy News, I am Hannah Odami.
An entomologist with the University of Energy and Natural Resources is raising public awareness about the consumption of African palm weevil larvae, known as akokono in the Akan language. According to Dr. Jacob Parashunga Anankari, the coordinator of the Health Insect Project, the insect is highly nourishing for the body and has the potential to protect the environment because it generates little or no greenhouse gases. Joy News' Mahmoud Nuruddin was at his insect farm in Sunyani and reports that each female adult could lay up to 300 eggs.
These beans you are seeing all over here have either the larval or adult stages of the African palm larva, which is traditionally known as akokono in the Akan language. So we use very simple agricultural products and sometimes agricultural waste to produce these nutritious edible insects.
Dr. Jacob Anankwari, an entomologist and lecturer at the University of Energy and Natural Resources, says the larvae grow between 21 and 28 days before harvesting.
Once these ones hatch and grow up to 21 to 28 days, they are often ready for the market. So harvesting a few of them. I don't want, some have started weaving cocoons, so I don't want to bother them so much. So you can have a look. If you see a bin like this, it has coconut husks and other, so you see larvae all over. You can see larvae everywhere. I was just harvesting a few of them.
They have a high rate of reproduction, and one bean can harvest between 150 and 180 larvae, weighing around 1 kilogram depending on the size.
So 150 to 180 will be a kilogram depending on the sizes. Because you see, if these ones are much smaller than these ones. Okay, so these are actually ready for the market. This is about the 8th insta stage. So it means these eggs were laid first. Yeah, so each bean has a minimum of 1 kilo. Some have 2 kilos, others have as high as 5 kilograms. And all this depends on the number of adults I have put in each bean. Some have just 3 pairs, others have 2 pairs. But if you have 5 pairs, then you are getting a lot of larvae. Because each female adult can lay as much as 300 eggs. But the thing is, not all the eggs will hatch. And if they all hatch, not all of them will grow into adulthood, because if there is limited food, there may be cannibalism in the beans.
It contains 19 of the 21 essential amino acids, as well as high levels of protein and iron.
They have 19 out of the 21 essential amino acids, and they have superior protein and iron content that I will share with you at a different point in time. So if you come and take a look at this, this is a bin containing, these are 2 bins containing adults that we inoculated 3 weeks ago. And these are the adult stages. They are dead now. And then these are the larvae. These are just 3 weeks old. And you can see them looking healthy, strong, and yummy. So these ones will lay eggs, and the eggs will hatch into young larvae.
The edible insect emits no or very little greenhouse gas. According to Dr. Anankwari, eating them could help with both food insecurity and climate change.
And then whereas the beef has 14 milligrams of calcium, the insect has 88 milligrams. So somebody should tell me why we should not promote the consumption of edible insects. Then again, these insects do not emit greenhouse gases. Only a few groups of insects emit little greenhouse gases. If you compare these to conventional meats like beef, these produce 100 times less greenhouse gases. Okay? And then if you also look at the amount of vegetation you need as the palm larvae, you need little space. Look at this little space that I'm using. And I'm producing several kilos per week.
Currently, 1 kilogram of palm larva costs between 70 and 100 cedis.
We produce and we are not able to meet the quantities that people are purchasing. Because if I tell you the number of people who place orders and the class in society who place orders, you'll be shocked. That is why the prices have gone up to about 70 to 100 Ghana cedis per kilo. And why is it expensive? It's because we are not so many, just a few people are producing.
Dr. Anankwari refuses to share his trade secret, but says that production is simple and cost effective.
So you need a simple red bin like this, which is relatively cheaper. Okay, this is a bin that you need, and then you need a wire mesh like this, and this is supposed to prevent predators and parasitoids. When I say predators, I mean wall jackals, lizards, rats, and parasitoids are insects that feed on other insects. And then you also need a rope and then a rubber band to hold it in place. And then you need a cloth like this just to cover as I'm doing, so that those insects which can actually penetrate the wire mesh holes will not be able to penetrate that. So you can see that other insects have come to lay their eggs on the cloth. We simply wash this periodically. So without this wire mesh, all these insect eggs would have been inside the bin, and that will contaminate our setup, and that is why we're doing this.
The entomologist says Ghana must push for innovation to encourage the growth of insects in order to help the economy grow and protect the environment.
So we can collaborate with these people, get them on board, train and empower them to produce the black soldier fly, Hermetia illucens larvae, which will augment or replace fish meal in the diets of poultry, fish, and pigs. And I'm sure with that, we'll be able to fully feed our people with the right amount of protein without necessarily importing protein. And that will go a long way in helping the economy, because we will no longer have to spend so much cedi to buy dollars and import meat products.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Climate Focus is brought to you by Joy News in partnership with Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging gaps for positive youth development, and the Climate Development Knowledge Network.
Away from that, government spokesperson Felix Ofosu-Kwakye has strongly defended President Mahama's decision to consult the Council of State on petitions for the Chief Justice's removal. Now, dismissing claims that the move is politically motivated, President John Mahama has begun consultation with the Council of State following 3 separate petitions seeking the Chief Justice's removal. These petitions, submitted by various individuals, have been forwarded to the Council of State as required by Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution. Although this step is part of the constitutional process to determine whether there are grounds for impeachment, critics argue that the move is politically driven. However, speaking on Midday News with Mamiesi Nyamiche Thompson, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye maintains that the president is simply fulfilling his constitutional duties.
Keen to know which 3 persons made this petition. What does the petition also entail?
Well, the rules do not permit me or anyone else in government at this stage to disclose any details of the petition. It is at the point where a determination is made by the president in consultation with the Council of State that there is basis to set up a committee to look into it, that such detail can emerge. But as of now, I am constrained in terms of my capacity or ability to disclose anything regarding the specificity of the authors or the content of the petitions.
All right. Well, then, let's hear what criteria were used to determine that the petition merited further action, as in giving it to the Council of State to peruse.
First of all, the president does not need to make any form of determination in terms of merit. He is merely a conveyor belt, and it is his duty to consult the Council of State and make a decision as to whether or not to move the process forward. So we are at that stage currently. And when that determination is made, then the next steps will be followed, as clearly indicated in the Constitution.
Well, what is the expected timeline for the Council of State's review, and what are the next procedural steps if they advise proceeding with the petition?
Well, the Council of State will determine the time that they take to move the process forward. So once they bring in the advice, the president will act accordingly.
Right. Well, how does the government ensure that this process does not undermine judicial independence or set a precedent for politically motivated petitions against the judiciary? We already know that some people are already reading political motivations into this particular case.
Yeah, to begin with, the Constitution itself anticipates that public office holders, including the president himself, can become the subject of demands for removal based on perceived or alleged wrongdoing. For that reason, the framers of the Constitution put in place rigorous mechanisms to regulate such a process. It is that process that is being followed. It is not the case that once a petition is slapped in, the president proceeds to remove anybody. In fact, the president does not have the power to do so. The Constitution says that it should go through a process involving a committee of persons who should have capacity to make such a determination, including 2 Supreme Court justices. So it is not an arbitrary process based or motivated by any thinking of the president. It is a process laid down by Ghanaian law, which should be followed insofar as every criteria and every threshold is met. So the issue of political motivation does not even arise, because it is not a determination made by the president. It's a determination made by persons who are clearly indicated by the Constitution.
Well, I'd like to know, even though you said you cannot reveal the contents of the petition nor the people who brought it, I just want to know, is it an issue of stated misconduct or incompetence or what?
I am not able to disclose any detail at this moment. When a determination is made to move the process forward. Those details will emerge.
All right. I know that these hearings will be held in camera, but what steps are being taken to ensure transparency and also to maintain public confidence in both the judiciary and the executive's handling of the matter?
Well, the Constitution was written by persons who were well-meaning. And to the extent that the constitutional provisions are followed, there should be no cause for concern in terms of transparency or the lack of it. All that is happening is that the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, which dictates how such a process should be carried forward, is being adhered to. The NPP is in no position to offer any lectures to government on this matter, given the very things that they did. If they thought that President Akufo-Addo had the power to do what he did, and indeed the Constitution said he had the power to do so, and he did so, and they were happy with it, they applauded him, they supported him. On what basis do they seek to impute any motive beyond wanting to follow the Constitution to the letter in this particular process? So the views he is expressing, in my view, are to be dismissed. The president has received petitions. The president swore an oath before the people of Ghana to abide by the dictates of the Constitution. So if he is required to take a step pursuant to constitutional provisions, he must be allowed to do so.
Now, you recall that Professor Kwekwasari had earlier petitioned ex-President Akufo-Addo for the removal of the Chief Justice, citing concerns about judicial accountability. That petition follows the constitutional procedure outlined in Article 146 of the 1992 Constitution, which mandates the President to act upon such request. But what does Article 146 say in the Constitution? It says that a justice of the Superior Court or a chairman of a regional tribunal shall not be removed from office except for stated misbehavior or incompetence or on ground of inability to perform the functions of its office arising from infirmity of body or mind. 2 says that a justice of the Superior Court of Judicature or a chairman of a regional tribunal may only be removed in accordance with the procedures specified in this article. It continues to also provide that if the President receives a petition for the removal of a Chief Justice of a Superior Court other than the Chief Justice or for the removal of the chairman of a regional tribunal, he shall refer the petition to the Chief Justice, who shall determine whether there is a prima facie case or not. And 4 continues to say that where the Chief Justice decides that there is a prima facie case, he shall set up a committee consisting of 3 justices of the Superior Courts or chairmen of the regional tribunals or both, appointed by the Judicial Council, and 2 other persons who are not members of the Council of State, nor members of Parliament, nor lawyers, and who shall be appointed by the Chief Justice on the advice of the Council of State. Now, 5 says that the committee appointed under Clause 4, which we just read, of this article shall investigate the complaints and shall make its recommendations to the Chief Justice, who shall forward them to the President. Now, here is what matters to us. It says that where the petition is for the removal of the Chief Justice, the President shall act in consultation with the Council of State, appoint a committee consisting of 2 justices of the Supreme Court, one of whom shall be appointed chairman by the President, and 3 other persons who are not members of the Council of State, nor members of Parliament, nor lawyers. Continue to say the committee appointed under Clause 6, which is what we've been concerning ourselves with in this development, is that of this article shall inquire into the petition and recommend to the President whether the Chief Justice ought to be removed from office. 8, all proceedings under this article shall be held in camera, and the justice or chairman against whom the petition is made is entitled to be heard in his defense by himself or by a lawyer or other experts of his choice. And the President shall in each case act in accordance with the recommendations of the committee. And finally says that where a petition has been referred to the committee under this article, the President may, A, in the case of the Chief Justice, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State by warrant signed by him, suspend the Chief Justice. And B says that in the case of any other justice of a Superior Court or a chairman of a regional tribunal acting in accordance with the advice of the Judicial Council, suspend that justice or that chairman of a regional tribunal, and the president may at any time revoke a suspension under this article. But again, who are the members of the Council of State who are to make the determination of the impeachment? On your screen again, we'll bring you the members that constitute. It says that it is in a total size of 31 member bodies established under the Article 89 of the 1992 Constitution. And it says that 16 should be elected members. And you recall that we brought you the election of these members during their nomination and even election right here on the election headquarters on the Joy News channel. And a little later as well, it tells us that the president would also appoint 11, which he has already, and also 3 would be high-profile members, and a de facto member, 1, and the total will be 31. But let's bring you the percentage of that 31 members. It says that the president would directly or indirectly have appointed 45% of the members. Let's bring you some notable persons that you may know that are part of the Council of State. It's Edward Joe Ajaho, former Speaker of Parliament between the year 2013 to 2017, and also former MP for Aveno Ave from 1993 to 2013 under the NDC as a party, and he's also former Deputy Speaker between the year of 2009 to 2013. As well, you know about Justice Sophia Okufu, former Chief Justice of Ghana between 2017 to 2019, and as well, Supreme Court Judge between the year 1995 to 2019, and as well, another notable person you may have heard about will be Betty Mould Idrisu, former Minister for Education between 2011 to 2012, and also former Minister for Justice, Attorney General between 2009 to 2011. And finally, Air Marshal Michael Sampson Oje, former Chief of Defense Staff between 2016 to 2017. So those are some notable members that constitutes the Council of State, which you may know that by now the president is consulted to determine a prima facie case, which all of this will be held in camera. We definitely will bring you updates. But right now, though, I have 2 interesting gentlemen joining me in the studio. And I'm going to be talking to Titus Owusu-Darko and John, Amite John, and Anita John. Thank you for correcting me. Gentlemen, so I'm told that there's a special course at UNIMAG GAG that you both are pursuing. Tell me about it quickly.
So when you reach level 300, you'll be made to read political communication. And then this course is designed to train the young communicator about mediatization, political branding, political advertising, and then political marketing. So that is what the course is particular about.
And this course is called Political Communication Campaign.
Political Communication Campaign.
Okay, and so you both belong to a political party.
Exactly.
Tell me about it. What's it called?
Okay, so our political party is People's Democratic Party.
Okay. Okay, and so you have your policies.
Yeah, we have policies.
What's your topmost policy?
So we are looking at the education sector, and here we are saying that we are going to create the Special Schools Support Scheme. This particular policy is aimed at concentrating on persons with disability. When you look at these persons, you could notice that special attention hasn't been fully given to them. And so under my administration as the President of the Republic of Ghana, I aim to create specialized universities for these students. I mean, we all know that when I'm a person with disability and I find myself in Legon, full attention would not be given to me. But when I find myself in a specialized university, like we have in a specialized school like the Ghana Institute of Journalism, Ghana Institute of Languages, and then we have university specialized for persons with disability, full concentration and attention will be given to them.
So you're the flag bearer of the party.
Yes,
I see. And you are the campaign manager. So far, how has been your campaign and how have people been receiving your policies?
So far, they have been receiving our policy very well.
Okay.
Whenever they hear our policy, they hear that we have solid policies that if they vote for us, we can take Ghana from somewhere to somewhere because we are into save Ghanaians.
Okay, what informed the name for the political party?
So we believe in democracy, and then we believe in socialism, and so we came for the people, justice for everyone. We are saying that you have a say in governance. It's not all about capitalism, where sometimes the presidents would determine what you're supposed to do or would be determined for you. So we are for everyone. Everyone has a say in their governance.
So you as a campaign manager, what is your vision and where do you hope to take this party together with your flag bearer to? What's the vision?
Okay, so my vision for the party is that our first attempt, we should win.
Okay. By what margin? What percentage? What ratio?
So the margin, we are looking for 50 to 51%.
Okay. Is that what you need to win? It's just like the national...
Yes, please.
Okay, 50 to 51%. You're not looking for a runoff?
No.
You've not considered it at all? No. Okay, but how many parties are contesting, though?
7 parties.
7 parties.
7 parties. And on the ballot, do you have a ballot sheet?
Yeah.
What's your number on it?
Number 6.
You're number 6. Yes. But is there a debate happening?
Yes, please.
When?
Tomorrow.
What's the theme for the debate?
So it's just political communication, competition, 6th edition.
Surely, if you scan through, you may have seen a political party that is probably your biggest competitor.
We've seen them, we've read their policies, but we don't believe that there is a single political party that would overshadow PDP. Yeah.
You've mentioned that you want to set up a scheme that will support persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
In its entirety, what do you think about the free SHS, whether it should have been abolished or we should have maintained it? I'd like Anita to answer that question.
For free SHS, you all believe that's a good policy. But my party, if you come to power, we abolish the double track.
So you will maintain the policy, but you abolish the double track. What will you be replacing with that?
So we will give the private SHS the chance to recruit students, and the government will pay them.
Oh, okay. Okay, do you have any vision for women at all?
Exactly. So under my administration, of course, most of my appointees would be women. And then I'm going to appoint many women in governance so that they would have a say in politics. And then I aimed at supporting women in terms of entrepreneurship. So unlike the current administration is allocating money for women, the Women Bank, we have a policy tantamount to that. We are looking at empowering women financially so that they would be financially...
The 51 that this government has allocated is not empowering enough to set up the women's bank?
We will continue with that and then do certain things to upgrade it as well.
Do you have a vice? Do you have somebody vicing you? Is it a woman or a man?
A woman.
A woman. What's her name?
She's called Francisca Eve Elekplem.
Francisca Eve Elekplem.
Yes, please.
Okay. So when again is this debate happening? When?
Tomorrow, exactly 2 p.m.
What time?
At the South Legon campus, Unima KJ.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much and we wish you all the best tomorrow.
Thank you.
Right. 1 month after the elections, Germany has new parliament in place with the new Bundestag coming together in Berlin for its first meeting. We'll join me from Berlin and tell us, what can you tell us about the new parliament?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, there's a lot of new developments for Parliament. Indeed, the first thing maybe is that it is smaller than it used to be. The body had been growing in size for years, and now we had a change of our electoral system. The problem of those elected lawmakers, fewer than before, are women, only 32%. So their representation has dropped steadily for years now. That's not good, as also the German president pointed out. He says if our democracy has a problem with women, then our country has a problem with democracy. Now, looking at the parties in Parliament, it's quite apparent that the middle has been weakened and the left and right edges have grown. The radical right-wing AfD party is the second largest contingent in Parliament. Also, by the way, the one with the fewest women, followed by the conservative CDU party and the Social Democrats. Only the Green Party and the Left Party are sending more women actually than men to Berlin. And another interesting statistic, there are fewer entrepreneurs in the new parliament. Now, that could maybe be problematic with the economy, of course, being a front and center issue for the country. but it could also be a plus. After all, too often in the past, politics was dominated by the business community, with social topics often overlooked.
But tell me, what are the big issues Parliament will have to work on?
Well, like I mentioned, the economy is a major theme for the new parliament, as is the high cost of energy and how to get that lower. Germany has been in a recession for 2 years now, and growth predictions are pretty low for this year as well. At the same time, the government is going deeper into debt, as it wants to invest 500 billion euros in infrastructure, which is definitely necessary, though. Other topics for the new parliament: tax reform, financing and securing retirement and healthcare, cutting bureaucracy, and, of course, the major task every European government is currently facing: putting together a strong union that is, in military ways, but also from an economic perspective, less dependent on the United States. That, of course, as US President Trump has upended the Western alliance as we had known it for decades. Europe and Germany, we all know that we can't rely on long-established partnerships anymore. And whether it's another 500 billion to be invested in the military, or it's the fight against tariffs and securing fair trade, the new parliament definitely has its work cut out for them.
The parliament is still under the leadership of former Chancellor Olaf Scholz. When will the new government be ready to take over their seat?
Well, that's really hard to say. For now, coalition talks between the conservative CDU and the Social Democrats are ongoing, and it very much looks like they're coming together on many of the most important issues. That means we will likely have a government of these two parties, and it's likely be under Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Now, he has said from the get-go, right after the election, that time is of the essence. And indeed, with that loss of stability that I just mentioned, with Trump weakening international alliances, it's clear that Germany needs a solid leadership, but it is in fact looking good. I've seen that the parties are moving in the right direction, making compromises on their goals, including the business-friendly CDU agreeing to a higher minimum wage, for the Social Democrats on the other side supporting more military spending. The party's timeline was to have a government ready before Easter, and that's what I think we can still hope for.
Thank you so much, Lars, for bringing us updates from Germany's new parliament. That'll be also a wrap for the polls today. With me, MFA Akosia Adati. Do stay for our subsequent bulletins. And for more news, though, log on to myjoyonline.com. Thank you for watching.